Bring on my home end. Good. Okay. So we're all doing our thing. All right. All right. Do you want to start? Okay. No, good to start. Hold on.
There's Matthew Virtue. He's coming in the room. There he is.
Yes. We're recording this meeting. Hello, Matthew. Greetings.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning. Good to see you. I wish
Good to see you as well.
Good to see you, man. All right.
I'm Jimmy Matthew. Nice to meet you.
Sorry.
Nice to meet you,
Jimmy, host of Pro Cannabis Media, or well, numerous programming under the Pro Cannabis Media banner, I should say.
Nice to meet you.
And please, introduce yourself, please, Matthew.
Yes, I'm Matthew Virtue. I'm the CEO and founder of a very small company called Non-Such Cannabis. We aim to be one of the first small farmers that are EU GMP certified out of the island. That's where we are right now. Yeah. Right. Nice to meet you all.
Me too.
Sorry, excuse me. I just need to make sure that we're, all right, that it's hold on. Give me a moment, guys.
I like the fact that all the guests are Matthew or Matt. That makes it a lot easier.
There's Matt. Yeah, there's Matt as well. Hello, Matt. What the?
Sorry, I'm late.
That's okay. I think we've all started late. It's literally 9 o'clock. I'm just trying to, what? All right, something's really weird now. Or Dan, do you since I'm no longer the host, you have the ability. You have to start the webinar. Am I correct?
Yeah, I do.
Okay,
do you want me to do that right now?
Okay. All right. Let's give it. All right. Is that so? Everyone's in. We're all good.
Yep.
Yeah. Ready. All right. All right. Yes. Please start it. Rock and roll.
There you go.
Okay.
It's saying we're now live. So just double check before we do anything.
All right. Watch this. Let's get really creative here. Good God, my landlady will kill me if anything happens with this. I don't even.
How's everyone's day been so far?
Today?
Today.
It's been a good morning so far. I had a great call with an old friend, and that's always a great way to start the day.
Most definitely.
Yeah, that is a good way to start the day. It's been surprisingly chilly in New York. Like the temperature dropped from, like it was in the 50s last night, from maybe 90s the day before, like a 40-degree drop.
That happens in that part.
I'm in Boston, so I can. Yeah. It was such a relief too. We had,
Yeah, I mean that heat wave was terrible, bro.
Yeah, it's gonna be beautiful the next couple of days, and I cherish every day that the sun comes up, Matthew.
So do I, man. So do I. So do I.
All right. Well, let's start. We good? All right. I think my line's a little bit better as well. All right, we're good. I like that, but that's fine. Yeah, Dan, ready?
When you are.
All right. Let's. All right. Just count down from 5, I guess.
All right. In 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
And good morning. Welcome to the summer edition of the Gandactors.com Cannabis Conference and Expo series. We're here today. This is our opening session. We're here today. We're joined with a very, very nice small panel. We have our good friend Jimmy Young of Pro Cannabis Media who's joining us. We have Matt Lammers of MJ Biz Daily, and we have Matthew Virtue, who's a recent entrant into the cannabis space with the farm he's setting up in Jamaica called Non-Such. Please, gentlemen, please introduce yourselves. Take it.
I'll go first. I'm Jimmy Young. I'm coming to you from the Boston, Massachusetts area where it all began back in 1776. And that's where Pro Cannabis Media launched as well. I've got 40 years in commercial media experience, 25 as a full-time sportscaster. We've been live streaming 24/7 news, information, and educational content about the world of cannabis since about 2 weeks ago. We're doing that on our Roku channel, Apple, our own website, Pro Cannabis Media, and on Facebook and YouTube and all that neat stuff, all those social media platforms. And best of all, we also host 3 shows. We actually produce 3 shows a week. One's a news show called We Talk News. The second is my longtime podcast called In the Weeds with Jimmy Young. And the third is our live cannabis business talk show called The Green Rush Live. That's Fridays at 4 p.m. So we are a network of like-minded content producers who are pro-cannabis. That's who I am. Who are you, Matt?
Which one?
No, one's Matt and one's Matthew, I noticed.
Okay. Yeah, thanks for that. I'm the international editor for MJ Biz Daily. MJ Biz Daily puts on an expo in Las Vegas, as well as other places, but I help curate the international content. That's basically all the content on markets outside of the United States. And right now we're focusing on Canada.
And Solomon Israel is a good man.
He's a great man.
All right, they work together. In fact,
Yes, we
that's
have. Yes, we have.
That's correct.
That's my completely neutral opinion on him. He's awesome.
Right.
So Matthew, I think you got to reintroduce yourself too.
Yeah, no, absolutely. My name is Matthew Virtue. I actually sit in New York, but I'm the founder and CEO of a new cannabis venture called Non-Such Cannabis. We are going to be a hyper-organic, hyper-stable, sustainable farm out of Non-Such Portland. And I apologize. There's like construction outside.
I heard that. Yeah. Unavoidable.
I apologize for that, though. Hope you guys caught that.
No, it sounded like someone was in distress. So I'm glad it was just construction.
Right on. Well, all right. Well, let's get started. I mean, we're here to be the Activist Cannabis Conference and Expo. I started this as one to continue to engage the international community, especially in this time of sequester, in about cannabis, especially to keep Jamaica part of the international conversation. And I'm very, very glad that you guys can join us here today. But I don't know. Let's start with Jimmy. You had a little presentation that you wanted to show us about the history of cannabis. I don't know if I'm throwing Dan a little too quickly, but are we ready for that yet? Or let's go briefly go through, because what Jimmy was doing was kind of a history of cannabis from the American point of view, but the way that has happened has kind of affected us globally, obviously here in Jamaica to the highest degree. So we can maybe open with something from that, and then just let the conversation flow from there.
Well, I tell you, I'd love to get feedback from the other gentlemen in the room, because as I continue to learn more and more about the history of cannabis, not just here in the States and America, but all over the world, and the 5,000 BCE remnants of cannabis in a tomb somewhere. So we all recognize, I think, in this room that the use of cannabis as a medicinal plant has been around for thousands of years. The United States of America has only been around for a couple of hundred years, and they've done a great job of bringing some of the colonial ideals, if you will, from Europe over to the North American continent back in the day when Christopher Columbus decided he would take an excursion across the pond and supposedly discovered America, only to find that there was a whole bunch of indigenous people here already. And I'm pretty sure that in the Caribbean, they knew about cannabis long before Columbus and the settlers from Europe came over to America. Am I wrong in assuming that, guys? I mean, you both seem to know enough about the history of what this plant in the Caribbean and Jamaica. Am I wrong? I mean, it was around for thousands of years in the islands, wasn't it?
Well, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think it was actually brought over from India, with the indentured servants. It might have been there before, but there's no real documented history of it being on the island before. Any widespread use of it came with the indentured servants that came over after slavery from India and China.
Well, it was colonialism, as you are referring to, that British Empire, and the folks from that empire had indentured servants or slaves, and I don't know if it's ever been documented that those indentured servants and slaves actually brought it over, but we do know that in the United States of America in the 17th century, in 1600s in Virginia, there was a law referred to two kinds of hemp, both English and Indian, as you mentioned. Basically, they wanted all farmers in the early settling of the United States of America, the first colonies, those 13 original colonies, to plant cannabis indica. Now, it was also used as currency back then too. So again, I mention this only because I think if you want to look at the last 80 years of prohibition in the United States and how the plant that was being used as a medicine for hundreds of years in the United States of America became prohibited, it really does go to that colonialism. You mentioned India. And obviously there's English influence in this as well. But the origins are really from all over the world.
I'm gonna have to jump in and say I will have to agree with that because I mean let's not forget that when the Columbus he came, he got to the Americas, that was by mistake, by the way. He was heading somewhere else. But when they annihilated the indigenous population, so we don't know what they actually had. And so I mean, they're now digging up great, as you said, 17th, whatever, 2nd century BC, whatever, tombs with traces of cannabis. We don't know where they're now digging up stuff. I think there was a find a couple of years ago. So the indigenous people, they may well have had their access to cannabis, and then that was they were eradicated. The Europeans came in, they brought over the Africans from this dark continent, these subhumans who had no history, no culture, no nothing. So they, of course, are not going to know anything about cannabis. Then they brought over these slightly higher class people, the Indians. Oh, maybe they have a little bit of culture. So it's tricky because the story is being told by, the perpetrators of a significant crime.
Right. But there is a consistent theme there that it was the white,
Indians, absolutely. Well,
the white person from the European colonies and empires, if you will, were the ones that were trying to maintain their position in the world, if you will, and brought those ability to take other people from other parts of the world and make them subservient to them. Needless to say, it was built on injustice. It was built on slavery. And it's a shame that it had to happen that way. But, I think it's important when you talk about the history of the plant in this side of the world, in the United States of America, that we bring in the fact that this truly was something that was the white settlers came in, they put the Native Americans and the indigenous people, they took as much land away from them as they possibly could, put them into little reservations. I mean, needless to say, it is not a proud moment as you look back at history. And I was a history major, just in case anybody wants to check that. Tufts University class of 79, no less. So I've studied a lot of how the race status and power has evolved in the United States of America over hundreds of years. And cannabis has really been a part of that, as has the injustices towards people of color. I mean, you can't deny that fact of history. As we move on from the settlers, if you will, into the 19th century, from 1850 to 1937, cannabis was used as a medicine for 70, 80 years. In the 1920s, I love this stat. This is what, and by the way, I bet I got this from MJ Biz Daily. I'm going to give you guys credit because I'm a big fan, man. Okay, I just want to say that. U.S. doctors wrote 5 million prescriptions for cannabis from 1900 to 1920. Now, these were doctors who had gone to Harvard Medical School, Yale Medical School, New York Medical School. So the highest levels of medicine at that time was accepting cannabis as a treatment and writing prescriptions into the 1920s.
Right.
Just wanted to
throw
that out.
What I mean, we'll look at Matthew. What about you? Might know a little bit more about it, the history of Jamaica. When did because you know that we are great, grandmothers, everybody have the grandchild and so on and so forth. When did it become criminal in Jamaica?
I can't remember exactly what the date was, but it was the Ganja Act that they just overthrew. I want to say it was in the 1930s as well. I do believe that it was tied to a paper manufacturer and the patents in using hemp to make paper as opposed to other types of raw materials. Because apparently you can't patent the process for hemp to make paper. And there was some lobbying in Congress back in the day, and they said, "Yep, you know what? We kind of want to support that business as opposed to this one," and then they
Right.
decriminalized it, and Jamaica kind of followed suit. Is my understanding of it. But where we are now, though, is that like it's becoming more and more decriminalized. Medical programs, full recreational programs. I think Connecticut just passed last night as well, or maybe the day before. So I think the way it's trending, we're looking towards like a state's majority soon, which at that point then it becomes federally legal in the United States.
Yeah.
I just hope, like, as a Jamaican, that Jamaica kind of beats it to the punch, and there's a full recreational program down there.
Unfortunately, I think Jamaica's waiting, and I don't think they want to be. They don't want to beat America to the punch. Unfortunately, I think politically, socially, they're going to be pushed to do so, but there certainly is not the political will. It'll be 100%.
It probably would not be very popular politically at all.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, but sometimes you have to be pioneers. So yeah.
Or sometimes the people just have to say, look, we put you in power, you work for us, do what we tell you to do. We say this is the way to go. Forget the UN treaty. Canada's done it. Mexico, there's a lot of people who are doing it. We don't need to be subservient to the United States.
Germany's legislation right now for full recreational legalization as well.
Right.
So it's
right.
just a massive.
Matt, Europe just came up, Germany. What is happening in Germany? And what want to talk about the whole the criminalization in Europe? Do you have anything about the history of that?
Well, since we're talking about colonialism a little bit, just kind of want to make one point. It's interesting looking at it through a modern day lens of what's happening in the Caribbean, especially in places where the UK still rules. So if you look at the British Virgin Islands, for example, they passed a law last year to legalize medical cannabis, and the UK is not allowing them. They're refusing to allow that law to enter into force, which is, it might be, I'm not a historian, but I've spoken with historians about this, and no one can ever recall anything like this ever happening before in the Caribbean for the UK's dependent colonies. And so it's extremely bizarre and unfortunate that the UK is kind of reverting back to its colonial ways with respects to cannabis legalization. It's pretty disgraceful, in my opinion. That it's unfortunate that it hasn't received more international attention.
Right. Well, I guess we have to talk about it more. I don't know. I don't think the British have really. I don't think they relinquished their colonial ways.
Yeah, apparently not.
I think they hold them very much with a valor of pride. That this is what we did. This is our history. Do not take that away from us. So they're they're posing as much as they can. Unfortunately, yeah.
Even UK media is ignoring this. It doesn't make any sense. It's a pretty big deal, I think.
I think I read. You probably wrote. I think I did read about it.
This is the first time hearing about this situation, and it's despicable.
Yes.
Because they're usually very hands off with their, what do they call them, overseas foreign territories. Like, they came and do what they want to do with the banking situation. Same thing with Turks and Caicos. It's interesting though with the British Virgin Islands, because Cayman is in the same situation. They have a medical program there as well. I mean, it's virtually non-existent, but why are they picking on the British Virgin Islands and singling them out?
But the Cayman Islands can't grow. They can import. This is why
it Cayman is import only.
It's a very weird medical program that they have there.
People on the island have told me they think it's racist, that they think at the end of the day, the UK doesn't want a bunch of islanders growing cannabis on the island because they don't trust that they can control it. That's what people on the island have told me.
100%. And by the way, that should surprise anybody on this call.
Right.
Okay.
At all.
But also, the programs that they have in the UK itself are very closely monitored by the government, like extremely closely monitored. Like, it's almost as if they are in your shop with you 24/7. Yeah. So I think they're just like approaching this extremely cautiously as well. I mean, like, London is one of the number one places for recreational drugs in the world. So, they're probably looking at with their eyes open and saying, hey, listen, maybe we do have a problem here that we need to be really, really aware of.
But the joke is that the only problem or the only danger with cannabis is the fact that you criminalized it. Because the plant is not dangerous. You know, so
Yeah.
that's so even let's Jimmy, let's jump back into that because when now the criminalization, let's how did you know
So
why
that
did
all
that
happened.
play
So
out?
it all happened. First of all, you got to go back in time to the turn of the 20th century and look at the white industrialists who were controlling the the flow and the growth of the United States of America at the time. Keep in mind, I'm pretty sure if I remember correctly, 1920 was when the women of the United States of America first got the right to vote. So
Yeah,
needless to say, the white man was in control of what was going on. And the biggest industrialists, a lot of them relied on publicity. And Mr. Hearst, Mr. DuPont, they were involved with the pulp industry and they saw hemp as a big threat. And they saw Mexican immigrants coming into this country. And like so many other things in history where the white man, he didn't like the fact that they didn't look like him, sound like him, and that they were using that evil slang word, that marijuana, so much. So they took advantage and said, you know what, we're just going to prohibit the use and sale and take this medicine out of society. And we're going to prohibit it with that Marijuana Act of 1937. And they put in charge this complete blatant racist white supremacist named Harry Anslinger as the first drug czar. And he was the one who really set the stage for prohibition. And let me just read you a quote, if you will, by this guy who I don't even think we should be giving that much time to, but I'm going to quote him just to give you an idea of what it was like. This was part of the Jim Crow era in the United States of America, one of the most segregated and racist times in our history. So prohibition was driven by racism and myths. There are 100,000 total marijuana smokers in the US, and most are Negroes, Hispanics, Filipinos, and entertainers. Their satanic music, jazz, and swing result from marijuana usage. This marijuana causes white women to seek sexual relations with Negroes, entertainers, and any others. This is Harry Anslinger. This was the drug czar. This was the guy, the evil guy who made this whole thing illegal.
the whole point of that argument is that it's not even about the drugs, it's about the fact that these people use them and you don't like it. I mean, there is clear there's nothing in there that tells me that the drug is dangerous. Nothing.
No.
Except for it's just we just don't like the music that these people play. That's not a danger. Do you understand? It's all about that's 100% social. That's not physical, it's not mental, it's nothing to do with society. The straight one, depending
Yeah,
on
he's not even saying it's bad for you.
Exactly,
Right.
exactly. It's like this is just what these people who use it do. You know, it's like
Personally,
okay.
I like jazz, I like music, and I like entertainers. And I'll be honest, I like black people too, because they're different than me. That's what I like, you know? And
I
he
know.
didn't want to have anything to do with that because let's face it, guys, this is unfortunately, it's a very sad part of our history from the United States perspective. And to be honest, the systemized racism that was put in place back then is still in existence to this day.
Absolutely.
And cannabis is right in the middle of it. And a perfect example, Matt, is what you brought up. You know, the British colonies, they don't want to give it up. I will say this about the English press. They're more concerned about England's performance in the European Cup than they are about the fact of the injustices with cannabis in the British Islands right now. Just want to,
Yeah.
thought
I
I'd
mean,
throw
but that also spreads to recreational programs and medical programs in the United States. The people who have gotten the license are usually the sons and daughters of the cops.
This is so, which is ironically interesting. There's actually one. I don't need to jump in there.
neighborhood dealers
There's a
of the
person that's
business.
just really upsetting people very, very much because apparently he threw a lot of people in jail and now he's like a big head of some company. I didn't mean to interject. Please go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, it's still like that social injustice is still happening. Like
Right.
it just recreational market was just approved in New York, and I've had a neighborhood dealer since 5-10 years ago, and he's worried about now losing his job because I'm going to switch to dispensary once a dispensary opens up, and it's really not fair. Like it's I don't know how they're going to do it, but they shouldn't be taking that income away from the projects, basically.
Right. Well, but then they have the social programs. How and I keep hearing people talk, oh, it should be the black people, the black and brown people, they should be running the industry. But again, do they have the skills? So what do we do? How do we how do we
I guess, I mean, I
include
think we really got to take a good hard look at those social programs and really, really implement them, and it not just be a fraction of the industry, but really a majority of the industry should be dedicated to people who have been socially affected by cannabis, or people who are currently making a living off of the gray market.
Because it's the same people who are pushing the industry forward that are, you know, it's like, we're gonna be killing your business because I'm gonna start going to the dispensary. I got more options, whatever. I want edibles instead now, or oils or whatever. Yeah, that's an interesting argument. I'd love to see how to really truly fix that. But is it, because you can't just say we're gonna hand you a license now, just go do whatever. It's a much work.
No, I agree. I mean, there needs to be some way to control it, but we got to figure out a way to encourage people who have been making a living off of this, who've been affected by this more so than anyone else.
That's it. I've never thought of it from that point of view.
The industry, because like, listen, if you take away the weed man's job, what is he going to do next, right? Because I'm not going to stop making money. I'm going to find something else.
Well, I think that, and Matt, I bet you can back me up on this. It's another reason why the illegal trade is thriving during the legal green rush right now, because they've been doing it longer. They understand the marketplace, and they can put their prices out underneath some of the legal cannabis that's being sold in legal states. Now, I will say this about my home state of Massachusetts. In this law that was voted in 2016, social equity applicants were supposed to get first crack at a lot of these licenses, and they continue to have struggles with that for that very reason. And I believe in workforce development. I believe in training. I believe, you know, if we do something in Washington, D.C., and with Senator Schumer's bill and Senator Cory Booker's bill that we keep hearing is going to be introduced perhaps in July, it is all about the expungement of records and giving an opportunity for those who've been most affected on the war on drugs, an opportunity. But opportunities do not sometimes work out so well in the realities of a highly regulated industry, which is exactly what has unfolded here in the United States, where you have to have big bucks even to go through the application process.
Exactly. I mean, the New York, like, we're looking at the what the legislation actually looks like and the criteria to go and apply for a license, and they're looking for you to have like $1 million,
right,
before you even put a seed in the ground, before they're taking your application seriously. Now, how is somebody who's been living in the projects going to really show that kind of cash?
Worse it
Even
if
if
you're
you're
incarcerated. You know, worse it if you've been incarcerated.
like, so maybe they do a thing where there's an access to funding, where stuff is waived, where it's a 95% reduction in fees, or fees are completely waived to encourage people to get into that market.
I'd love to see that.
But again, but the two different issues though. That's because it's like the expungement. I fully agree with that. And the declaring a record, the releasing of people. Look at D'Angelo's program, the Last Prisoner Project. But what about those who are in the industry who maybe don't even have a record? They were just that good. What are they going to do? That's a very good question. That's a very good question.
Because there are people out there like that who've been in the industry for a very long time, never been arrested, right? But you're a big head in the weed game, and you've been delivering to people all over the place, or making and compassionate use and all that kind of stuff, you know. But expungements, I mean, that should be happening automatically, right?
I agree with that. That should be up for debate.
That's not really anything. That's not even a gimme. That should just be coming along with the bag. The gimme is like, how long do you say? Since the 1930s, they've been terrorizing our community and calling us evil because we're smoking some weed. Maybe they say, okay, you know what? For the first 70 years, only people who are from these communities can actually take part in this business.
Well, that'll never happen. Once there's money, there's money. It's like, whoa, there's money. You're talking about.
That would never happen, because like, the amount of money that's associated with it now, it changes the whole game.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but I mean, there's work to be done, but at least people are thinking about social equity. Like, once upon a time when California went full medical, there was no such thing. It's like, what's this social equity? It's like, listen, we're legalizing the weed, just be thankful.
Yeah, right? But this is true. That's kind of how it passed through.
In the right direction. But yeah, there is work to be done for sure.
All right, what about from a European perspective? How are things moving forward? It's quite. I'm sure it's complicated. I know it's complicated across the board because each European country is different. Than the UK is not even in Europe anymore, and they're doing their thing. They kind of going in one direction, and I think they pulled back. I don't know what's really happening over there right now.
They're making certain countries are making small advancements, like that France is starting their pilot project.
Right.
The Netherlands has a pilot project going for recreational cannabis. The Danish pilot program is going terribly. Germany is not growing as fast as most companies need it to for them to survive, let alone make a profit. Europe is doing fine, but it's not growing exponentially.
Matt, you said Germany is not growing as fast?
It's not growing as fast as companies need it to survive. Like most companies are investing too much money ahead of their actual sales. That's probably the biggest problem in this industry is companies investing money and not investing proportionally with their growth. So investing as you grow or just ahead of your growth. Instead, they're throwing billions of dollars at large facilities that they won't make a profit on for decades.
Yeah, I just heard of a Danish facility that just went that just got bought up for 90 what is it 90% discount, distressed.
Well, I mean, it depends. Yeah, I've been looking into that. So Canopy Growth bought that building for about $3 or $4 million, and they sold it for $20 million. But I don't know how much money they put into it in the last 3 years. Right. So they might have invested $100 million into the greenhouse or more or less. I don't know. So it depends. The company that bought it, Little Green Pharma, is taking on a much bigger risk, in my opinion, than they're telling people. Because and I'm writing this article right now, that greenhouse won't be going at full capacity for many, many years. So it's like buying, pardon me?
How big is the space?
I think it's 300,000 square feet.
Oh my God.
It's not small.
Yeah.
It's huge.
It's huge. That's not small. Yeah, that's not the appropriate adjective.
And so
that's large.
Canopy was using that facility at 25% capacity. And Little Green Pharma says they're going to use it at 50% capacity. But tell me this, in what other industry would you buy a factory where demand only exists for 50% of the factory's capacity? No one does that.
They're doing the projection.
Is the market demand though? Is that what it is, or
they're saying they think the market will grow into the facility's capacity, but that's what everyone thinks. And so far, everyone has been wrong. Everybody is wrong about that.
They're investing in the future.
Everybody who's invested in the future in this industry like that has lost their shirt. Every single person.
Absolutely. And at some point, the people that have that kind of money to lose have to start thinking about, gee, maybe we need to adjust our projections a little bit before we start throwing more money at the problem. By the way, not something I'm very familiar with, but I sure have read about this happening a lot in our world.
Well, let me jump. Well, tell me, are the projections, or are the, I guess, the lower projections, or is that based on the rollout of the legalization process that's kind of limiting the growth of the industry, or is it that the market is just not demanding what they're
well, the law and the regulations create the boundaries for the legal industry, right? And they create the ceiling for how much money. Like the regulations, the rules will create the ceiling for how much money can be made in the legal industry. So in some countries, the ceiling is very low because the rules are super strict, like in the UK, for example. In most countries, it's like that. And in Canada, the ceiling is like middle low because our rules are pretty strict. But at the end of the day, you create a business for the rules that exist. You don't create a business for the rules that you want to exist.
Right. Yeah, well, you'd like to think that anyway, Matt. I got to ask you a question about the European market for a second. You know, in the United States, one of the biggest barriers to profitability in the cannabis space is the inability to write off traditional business expenses that every other industry has. The 280E clause that's really held up by that Schedule 1 classification. In Europe, do they allow European businesses to have any kind of a tax write-off typical to other businesses?
I assume that would vary from country to country, but I guess the answer would be yes.
Okay.
Yeah, the same thing in Jamaica as well. Like you're allowed to write off regular business expenses as well.
Another injustice in the United States in cannabis,
just
I might
because
add.
of the federal stuff. But that federal Schedule 1 has ripples, right? Like banking is still extremely hard for us.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Extremely hard, and it's because it's a federal one or a class 1 Schedule 1 narcotic on the Fed's watch list.
Right up, which brings up thank you. That was a perfect segue. I completely forgot about this. I had a little issue this last weekend. So there is the argument: full legalization, states' rights. Sorry, fully federal legalization versus states' rights. What are your opinions?
Who wants to go first on that? I've got lots to say about that.
I mean, what is it? If 29 states go legal, then it's federally legal, right? Because majority rule.
But then the banking, that also still doesn't change the bank.
No, then it becomes federally legal. It becomes I don't know exactly what happens, but states' rights, sure. I mean, it should be federally legal, or at least taken off of being a Schedule 1 narcotic, so that people could actually study the drug in an open setting,
Right.
Publish their findings, so that people could open a bank account and wire money like regular business. So yeah, that should happen as soon as possible. But I think opening up the market federally, I think they need to think long and hard on that. And again, I'm going back to social equity. I'm going back to making space for small farmers so that we don't have little green farmer buying how many 100,000 square feet of facility. I mean, that space should really be run by 10 or 15
Different
other small
companies,
farmers.
I think so.
Yeah, or other small companies, as opposed to just one person or one company going in and trying to dominate a market. I'd love them to put some protections in place like that, because I don't think Canopy Growth and Aurora are doing such a good job with it. But that's just me. That's my opinion on that.
I should probably throw in there states' rights, decriminalization, or federal legalization, which would be
I would like to see it. First of all, I think the simplest thing would be for the president to make an administrative decision and just take it off Schedule 1. What does that do? That immediately opens up the banks immediately. Okay. And it also, I'm pretty sure it gets rid of 280E. And Matt, you might want to correct me on that if I'm wrong, but that would be the simplest thing. And then you leave it up to the states. So you decriminalize federally almost, with one stroke of an administrative pen. However, now that the politicians are involved, now that you've got the filibuster playing out a role in the United States Congress that has created a stalemate of government and anything getting done, it's a really interesting time to be looking at the cannabis space, because it does touch every aspect of our world right now. I don't know if anybody in this room or anybody I've talked to who knows what's going on thinks that the federal government can implement a legalization plan or structure or regulations at this point in time. Most of the people that are making those decisions are still pretty clueless, which goes back to education again. And you've got to start small. I mean, look at the challenges in all the legal states over the last, 10, 12 years, right, that have gone legal. They're still having issues in Colorado. They're definitely having issues in California. They're most certainly having issues in Massachusetts, just trying to do the right thing by the law.
Okay.
So you can't tell me that the federal government is going to be all of a sudden say, okay, here's how it's going to work. There's going to be a tax on this. And then, yes, we're going to have interstate commerce, and there'll be a tax on that. And before you know it, you're basically taking the industry by the you-know-whatsies and tying them up for good before they even launch. My
You
opinion.
say balls, it's all right, but that's fine.
Yeah, I know, but I'm an old guy. I don't like to, I'm an English guy, I teach oral communication skills. I actually value the English language in some capacity if I can.
I got you. Anyone else want to throw anything in there?
I don't know. I think that you have to take wins where you can get them, and I think at this point, hoping for federal legalization, I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon.
Right.
Yeah, like you guys were saying, I think that the best we can hope for right now is banking reform and then federal decriminalization,
Right.
and then leave the rest up to the states. I think that's the best we can hope for at this point.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's going to change in the next 6 years.
And that would be huge, right? And which is within 6 years,
Yeah.
you're saying, right, Matt? Yeah.
I think that's the best you can hope for in the next 6 years. I don't think that Biden is capable of what some people want him to do. I don't think he's politically capable. I don't think he's capable as the man he is. I don't think he wants to legalize cannabis. He's not interested in the political fight that will involve.
He doesn't. He's too old. He's
I
way
actually
old.
think
For some
it's
reason, he's
very
like, oh, it's a
popular.
gateway drug. He can't get that out of his head. It's just you can't get him to change that
Yeah.
opinion.
I mean, Biden co-authored the Rave Act, right? Like, he's
Right.
not. He doesn't like the drugs.
Yeah.
He's firing his interns who test positive for cannabis.
Jesus, can you believe that? I'm sorry.
He's not
yeah,
friend of the
that
cannabis.
outburst. Yeah, that's crazy.
So I don't think we're seeing it under this administration. I agree.
No, and I don't think it's going to be many, many years
Yeah,
before.
and to be honest with you, I'm not super mad at that because I think keeping some of it in the gray market area actually is beneficial to society.
I
To be
suspect
completely
so, yes.
honest
I
with you.
suspect so, yes.
I think you'll always have the gray. You'll always have the gray market. Even with federal legalization, you're going to have somebody out there who's growing 10 plants instead of 6. If he's an individual, right? And what are you going to do with the extra 4 plants, the yield of those extra 4 plants? Now, certainly, I love the gift. I love the giving part, right? I mean, Matt's smiling. I agree. I mean, I love giving the gift of a pre-roll as a tip instead of cash.
In your freezer.
I'm buying that pre-roll just for the record, legally under my medical card. But I love being able to gift. And I think that the gift of cannabis has always been part of the gray market, certainly for as long as I've been alive anyway. That being said, not too much confidence in the federal government right now. Certainly an improvement over what we had, guys. I'm sorry, I have to say that. That being said, they're all politicians, right? And that is half the problem, is they try to make sure that they get themselves reelected and have the money for that reelection campaign to get reelected. And they've been in place for too long. I'm a big person that says we need term limits. There's way too many old white guys running this country. I'm sorry. I'll say it. Okay. I say it all the time. I'm really tired of it. And by the way, our president's 78 years old, right?
And that's a large part of the problem. He does have an interesting delegation of, his party is quite interesting, but even to get to the point of decriminalization, the safe back end and all that good stuff. That is what's blocking it? Because it makes a lot of sense. It's politically expedient. I mean, people even say that Trump might just decriminalize before the election just to try to win the black vote. I mean, it is politically expedient. People know this. 70-something% now, I think, agrees. At least 60-something plus recreational, 80-something, 90-something medicinal. So, what is the impetus? What's stopping it?
Money and greed.
There's not enough money in ganja. Come on, there's a shitload of money in cannabis. There's a ton load of money in cannabis.
Right, and they want to make and they all want to make sure they get their share of the pie. Okay, and as big a share, and by the way, as big a share as they could possibly get. That is the biggest. It's really interesting to me because the plant. And I'm going to go back to my friend, the Rastafarian that I interviewed back in 2019 at CanX, and he explained to me the plant brings people together. It is here for that reason. And yet it's being used as a political pawn in Washington, D.C. to separate. And I think that it's just crazy to me.
But isn't that how politics work, and especially in the U.S., especially with the Republicans? They like to divide and separate.
I have to like it, though. It's maybe the best system in the world, but doesn't mean I have to like the way it works.
I got you. Is it the best system in the world? Is there? I don't even
I
know.
would just like to see turnover of the people making the decisions that the people.
I agree. I agree. I
More-
think 25,
more
30 years in
regular.
the same job. It's like, well, but you normal jobs, you retire, you go get a gold watch, you get a pen, you go home. What is this? You know,
I mean,
sorry. Matthew was gonna, yeah, jump in.
This too is that there is still 30% of the United States that's against it. I was a part of the National Organization Reform of Marijuana Laws, and a couple of years ago it came up in New York for full recreational. So we went up to Albany to support the bill, et cetera, and the people who were against it were there too, and they were extremely organized. They were extremely vocal about it. So there still is that influence, which is very easy to get old white guy politicians who's a bit out of touch with what's going on to get his air and say, hey, listen, we're concerned about this. And it's spring offs of stuff that actually serves good, right? Like Mothers Against Drunk Driving. So they kind of root into something that actually is popular and does do some good and gets drunk drivers off the road and say, hey, it's going to be the same thing.
Right.
Whereas there are no studies to show that any of that correlates, but it's a Schedule 1 narcotic, so no studies can be done. So it's a persuasive argument, especially to somebody who's out of touch.
Right. No, I agree. A lot of the argument is it's just the gateway drug. It's just this, it's that,
Yeah.
and that still persists. That it's just not good for you. It's the recreational, the medicinal, fine if you do it that way. If you go to the pharmaceutical companies, that's okay. But the stuff in the streets, it's gonna kill you. It's gonna drive criminality up and this and that. And even though again, the only reason why it's bad is because you criminalize it in the first place. But it's an interesting catch-22.
Yeah.
Out of touch. I heard someone say out of touch. If the politician becomes out of touch with the people who put him in that seat or her in that seat, they need to leave that seat. The whole point of being a representative of the people in your district, whatever it is, or your town or your city, is to represent what the people want. And in every single poll,
we don't really choose who's in power.
I'd like to think that we could, though. I'd like to think that we could do that.
Then it would be Bernie Sanders now.
Thank you. That's the truth. This would be the second Bernie Sanders term right now. Let's be honest.
Well, hang on a second. But extremes don't work either. It's the ability to work together and come to the middle. But you have to have leadership in place, and you have to have the ability to actually listen to the people who put you there. And that's what bothers me. I think that they're there under their own little agendas, and I'm going to get reelected. That's really all I care about. I really think that's what motivates them. And I don't think
that's exactly what it is. It right now it boils down to the suburban soccer mom vote in Pennsylvania, in the swing states in Pennsylvania, Illinois, Michigan, and Florida, and nothing else matters. It doesn't matter what everyone else wants, because the fact is to win the presidency, you need those states, and that's what Biden's thinking right now. Is he's thinking about the next election, and you can see that in his messaging every day, not only in cannabis policy but in other policies. He needs to win the next election, because if he doesn't, the U.S. could backslide back into the Trump era, which would be arguably even worse than the last Trump era, probably.
Hang on a second. It's the midterms that he's concerned about, not
the presidential.
Not the president in 3 years.
Well, he's worried about winning
midterms.
He's worried about the midterms, but he's more worried about winning the next presidential election.
I don't think this is a bold statement. I think he knows that he just wants a Democrat to win the next election. He's just setting that up. I don't think he's going to hold 2 terms, but that's just my opinion.
Right. Well, I mean, I'd like to see the vice president take more control of this country. I'll be perfectly honest with you.
I don't know how she polls. It all depends how she polls. If she's competitive against the Republicans, maybe she'll be in. If she's not, she'll be out.
Right.
Hence the Bernie Hillary situation. But Hillary couldn't do it. That's all I have to say to that one. Anyways, it's all good. It's in the past. We've learned, I think. I don't know. But then what you see has that, what did the Trump era do for the cannabis policy? Because we know the Democrats do want to through. And then we had this 4 years of Trump. They had Obama was kind of moving, kind of the wavering, whatever. Then we had Trump. So is it how? I don't know. how much of a setback were the Trump years, or was it not so much of a setback? Are we in the same place or in a better place? Where are we going now, I guess? Or is it still just up in the air?
If you look at the scorecard is, 18 or 19 states, depending on how you look at South Dakota, whether it's legal or not. 39 states have medical programs. There was certainly more movement under his direction, but I really think it was an opposition to the direction he was taking us in,
Okay.
because he made it very clear that any state that had a marijuana question on the ballot, he knew more people would come out to vote.
Okay.
He
And
knew
what
that.
Democrats
He was
would
afraid
not
of that.
vote. Yeah, I know. It's right. You were telling people to take it out. This is true. You're telling people to take it off the bill because you knew. Okay, more black people come out to vote. Well, I guess that's the one way because you could stymie the vote as well. You put the wrong agendas on there, so the people is like, oh, whatever, man. I don't care about bicycles and the.
Then you could put it on the ballot and vote it in like they did in Mississippi. And then again, the controlling party in Mississippi decides to challenge the constitutionality on the state constitution of it. And they overturn a popular vote for medical cannabis in Mississippi with, I think it's 68% or 74% of the voters saying we wanted it. And now they're saying, well, technicality, sorry, guys. Back to square one, you're not going to get your medical program. Look, the two sides have dug their heels in instead of talking to each other.
Come together, right. But we know it's moving in one direction. It's not going to go backwards. It's moving in one direction. Is it just we just kind of wait until, I don't know, these people keel over? I don't know. What do we do? I don't know.
Well, I think that it goes back to the states' rights, right? Like, I think enough states actually are going to go fully rec that it becomes a majority situation. I think what is it that we need? 29 states.
I was just asking, what is that? 26, 29 states. If they legalize it, that means it's federal. Well, what is that? How does that work?
Yeah, that means it's a majority rule. So all states know federally. It becomes federally legal right away.
So is that going to happen first? Or is actual, like, what do you think? Is that going to happen before a federal law passes?
No, I think states' rights take it over. We get to a majority of the states having recreational programs, and it becomes adopted federally by majority rule.
I think I can't look. It's going to be at least 10 years for that to happen. Because think about how long it took them to get to this point. Now, granted, legislators all over the country, state legislators, are taking up this question right now. I have a friend in the New Hampshire House of Representatives, and even New Hampshire now is actually getting Democrats and Republicans to talk to each other about how they can introduce adult use legalization of cannabis in New Hampshire. That would be the live free or die state, I just want to say.
Right.
So in other words, they're doing a better job in New Hampshire with Republicans and Democrats talking to each other about a common goal, cannabis legalization, than they are in DC.
Okay, well, got to start somewhere, I guess. You got to start somewhere, I guess.
I don't know. They've done a great start, guys. I think it's great. I'll be honest with you, Matthew. You may be the first person I've heard say the majority of states, if they have a majority in the states, that becomes a national or federal thing. I'll be perfectly honest. I've not heard that before. I'm not a constitutionalist, by the way, so I don't know that for sure. I know someone I can call.
Yeah, I heard somebody who I respect who does constitutional law that we were speaking to about it, and he was like, yeah, that's probably what will happen first. So, yeah.
That's interesting.
That's interesting. So we've got that. The states can move, or Biden can just say, all right, look, let's just take it off Schedule 1 and move this thing forward. Either or. Well, which will happen?
That's what he should do.
Maybe I should try to interview Joe Biden. See what's up. I don't know. Say, come on, dude, what's up, man? Or talk to Kamala. Come on, she's half Jamaican. Jeez, come on.
I like Kamala. I'd be happy to talk to Kamala. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it actually one day.
Right on. I'm sure it'll happen. We'll make it happen. Watch, we'll work together on that. All right. Well, guys, I think we're coming up to the rounding out the hour. Anyone want to throw in anything else? Anything that you'd like to see? I mean, we're talking about what could happen, what's potentially happen, what might happen, what might look good. What would be an optimal scenario? I guess, wow, that's going to be an awkward question. All right, what about at the level of the UN? Is that if things change there, how do you think that's going to affect globally the industry?
Matt, that's your question.
I think there's a lot of balls up in the air right now at the UN, and so I don't know where they're going to land. The UN is far more conservative than most people think it is. So you're not going to change China, Indonesia, and India's mind, and they make up like 2/3 of the world's population. So that means if you want reform at the UN level, you need like all of the other Western liberal democracies, all of them, to come together to agree to this. And right now, that's not going to happen because the world is just dysfunctional right now. So maybe at some point. I mean, I don't know. I don't know when it's going to happen. I just know that right now things are really complicated, and I don't expect serious reform anytime soon at the UN.
No, me neither.
Anyone else want to throw anything else out in there? What about for Jamaica? And anyone have any interesting views on Jamaica? I don't know, Matthew, you started the licensing process and so on. Are things getting easier? Things getting better? Are we going to open things up? Are we going to open things up to the small farmer? Are we going to get a recreational for the tourist, or is it still going to be completely black market and then the dispensaries? What do you think?
I mean, Jamaica is such a young market, right? And what I like about, from what I've seen so far, is the investment to get in is affordable for the small farmer. You can open up a facility of 45,000 square feet, 4,500, I'm sorry, square feet, and produce cannabis, which makes you a player. I wish they would normalize relations with the EU in terms of GMP and good manufacturing practices and stuff like that, so that we could have some normalization, so I can get my stuff inspected and certified without spending so much money. But at the same time, too, the EU's GMP process has kind of made it in such a way where it's open enough to small farmers, so you can make that investment, and it's not $250,000. It's actually 95% of that, 95% discount in that for small farmers and micro businesses. So I think that the market is there. The cost of weed in dispensaries is way more than what it is on the street. I think until that disparity actually kind of,
I agree.
Balance,
you discussed
that the market that's in Jamaica is for a certain type of Jamaica, not the majority of the population. I think a lot of it caters towards the tourists. I don't like the full vertical integration. I think that it should be broken up. Right? If you have a dispensary, you have a dispensary. If you have a farm, you have a farm. If you process, you process. I think it encourages commerce in between the different sectors of the business, and gives more people a bite of the pie, so to speak. So not saying that they should take away what's there, but I think moving forward, they need to really think about, hey, listen, how can this industry be as inclusive to everybody concerned as possible?
But let me ask you about the disparity in prices with the dispensaries and the local, the local boys. Is that, I mean, do you, I mean, I'm just, as you're saying, it does kind of begs them to cater to a certain class of Jamaican, but that also opens up, that has also opened up. Now I know friends that they can say, oh, I'm going to the dispensary, and that's all right. It is something. I go to my boy down the road, they're like, oh, what you do with that ganja stuff? But now because of the dispensary, it's like, I guess it's acceptable. So that has kind of opened it up to that market, which I think has also helped us politically. I now that you mentioned that, I would think and I know like the people, it's like that's kind of open up that market, which is kind of also interesting. It's become more acceptable to that market.
Yeah, it's definitely helped with the stigma that has been associated with weed and who smokes weed and why they smoke weed. But in terms of sharing the money and it being the quality that's available in the dispenser being accessible to the majority of the population, that's not true.
I got
it's not happening. So yeah, but I mean, then again, it's a very young industry, right? It's a super early market. So we could see what changes people like me and you and whoever else comes behind us and with us can make.
To start, there are still far too many arrests for cannabis possession going on in this country right now. And it is time to make some drastic changes. I don't know if we're going to see it. I'll be honest. I'm not confident in this current administration at all right now. However, think about this just for a second, guys. They got both sides to actually agree that slavery was a bad thing in 1865 in the last week. Right. almost 200 years ago. We finally came to that conclusion. It was a bad thing. So, I mean, and now we're going to talk about this plant. And by the way, a plant medicine. We're still a long way away. You talk about the market. I'm just going to throw in a couple of quick things. The cost for a pound of wholesale cannabis in Massachusetts is the highest in the nation at $4,400 per pound. California, $900 per pound. Okay. That being said, they're still building grow farms here in Massachusetts. The fastest growing demographic market in cannabis is the wellness community, the 50 plus baby boomers. They're looking at it both from an investment and a wellness perspective. And again, getting the word out to that group has been a challenge, something we'll continue to do on a regular basis. But Amari, I really appreciate you putting this group together to chat, because I believe the more we have conversations like this, the better we will be overall as a humanity.
Thanks for having us, Amari.
Thank you guys very much for all coming. It's been a pleasure. It's a pleasure hosting you guys. It was a great conversation. It's a great way to start the summer edition of the ganjaactivists.com Cannabis Conference and Expo series. I will announce right now that Friday's sessions will be canceled. I do have a medical emergency to take care of. It's a dental thing, don't worry.
Take care.
Good luck with that, Amari.
But you'll see me again after, not to worry. But yes, thank you guys all very much for coming in, and please do enjoy the rest of the conference. We have a few more sessions this afternoon, a couple of business presentations and so on, and tomorrow we have a full day of sessions, and that'll be that. And then look out for this and other projects like this on the Ganja Project video series, which will be out hopefully sometime in July. All right, so thanks guys again, and that's it. Thank you. One love.
Thank you.
One love.
Cheers, guys. Have a good afternoon.
Same to you, man. One love.
Bye.
Thank you, Dan.
Yes, Dan. Thank you.
No problem. I just stopped the live stream. I hope that.
Cheers, everyone. Have a good day.
Have a good day.
All right, great. Thank you. All right. Oh, you people.
All right, and I got a recording of this. Would you like a copy with graphics on it and everything?
Sure. What did you use for the graphics?
I haven't used any yet. I was gonna probably design some off of your logo or whether the stuff you use on the site.
Yeah, sure. That'll be great. That'll be much appreciated. That'll be awesome. And how soon could you get that out? And I just realized well, thank goodness it's only the beginning, but because there's always a screw up between our time zones. So basically, like the countdown on my website was an hour late. But if people went to the link, they would have gotten in at the right time. But if they were following what was on the website, so I just saw like a bunch of attendees jump in at literally 10 o'clock. So I'd love to get it up and out there as quickly as possible. Maybe
I could get
graphics
that. I could get that to you by the end of the weekend.
All right.
Or the start of the weekend, I should say. Sorry, I meant the latest it would be to you by Friday.
All right, that's cool. You know what? That's fine. There's a stream on YouTube, so it's not live. Well, it's not public. I can give people some access to that because I'm seeing more people are jumping in. I got to do something now. I feel bad. It's not fully my fault. If they clicked the link, they would have seen it. But yeah, let me.
That's just technology. You can't worry too much about that.
but no, please do put that together. I would much appreciate it. That would be great. Because that's what I'm doing with all of these. They're all going to be packaged for our programming and our video wall and all that good stuff.
Okay.
So yes, please. That's great. But let me take care of my situation. I get ready for my next session.
Yeah, you go do that.
All right.
Have a good day. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you, man. Thank you.